I'm Logan Loya, and I'm here with Mr. Morris, and you're listening to Terror Talk. So, today we're going to be talking about horror books and books based off of movies.
Sure.
Uh, do you have any favorite horror books you've read or any movies you've seen based off of horror books?
Certainly. Yeah. Like I've told you before, I really enjoy reading Stephen King books and Neil Gaiman books. And so, obviously, I like Stephen King movies. Most of his books I've really enjoyed. So any Stephen King book, for sure. I was thinking about movies, and one horror movie that really got me when it came out was The Blair Witch Project. I was obsessed with it. And it was just pre-internet, really. So it just hit the right time where they could market that thing as real found footage, and no one really knew because there wasn't anywhere to go check. And I know that I saw that movie at least twice in movie theaters, and I bought the soundtrack, which doesn't even really have any music on it, it's just sounds. And then and I played, there were 3 Blair Witch computer games that I played all the way through that told the story of the Blair Witch and stuff. And yeah, I was obsessed with the Blair Witch when it first came out.
Yeah, especially with how they did it, is because they filmed all the interviews at the beginning of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
and then because there's no Google, so they can search it up if any of it was real. So I feel when it first came out, it was probably horrifying.
Oh, it was terrifying. And, now that those found footage movies are kind of cliche, they're kind of overdone at this point. But at the time, that hadn't really been done. There wasn't a documentary-style movie that was being pitched as, hey, this is real. We found this is real. We can't explain it, but we're putting it out there. Oh, man, it was scary. And I still love that movie. I think it's great.
Mm. Didn't they... I know they did the Blair Witch Project. Didn't they do Blair Witch or just another?
There was a Blair Witch Project 2, but it wasn't documentary style. It was just a movie, but it was different people, and it wasn't near as good. And then there was The Blair Witch, which I never saw, and it was a full-on Hollywood production. I think it was supposed to tell the story of the Blair Witch and stuff, but I never watched that one.
Yeah, it's especially when they multiple series. I know Final Destination has done it. I can't think of any others off the top of my head, but they put "the" in front of it,
Mm-hmm.
and that's usually the one in the series that isn't good.
Right.
Because you have Final Destination, which the 1 through 3 and 5 are pretty solid movies.
Yeah.
And then you have 4, which is just the Final Destination. And
yeah, I think I'll ever watch the first Final Destination. I was I got it.
yeah. But that one was made in 3D, which 3D horror movies altogether aren't great because they have a special camera, and then they since it's in 3D, they like to do, whoa, it's all in your face.
Yeah,
and
you
then
tell me you don't like Jaws 3D?
Oof.
That's not a good movie.
That is, the first 2 are the first one's good. The second one was all right.
Yeah, then they get kind of schlocky.
3 and 4 are terrible.
Yeah, Jaws the Revenge.
Yeah.
It's hunting down the family of, yeah, it's silly.
I remember one of them, I think it was 4, that took place at a amusement park or something.
I can't even keep them straight. But they're bad. They're bad.
Yeah.
As they go along.
I think they're redoing Jaws, which
I don't think I like that.
It could be good with nowadays how they could do the shark, because they could do CGI, but I feel it would be better if it was another practical shark, especially with now we have so much lighter weight.
Well, they'll screw it up by showing the shark way too much. That's part of what made the first one so great. You hardly ever see the shark. Of course, it's because the shark was broken most of the movie, but so they had to. But it ended up working out so great, because you hardly see it, and so it's all your imagination what's going on, which is way scarier than anything they're going to show you on screen.
Yeah, I feel that's something that can make a horror movie better if you don't see what's doing all of it a lot of the times. I mean, maybe like glimpses at it, but not like a full.
Well, it's like you go back to the earliest Alien and Aliens. You don't see the aliens a whole lot, and then as the movies went on, you started seeing them more and more, and those movies as they went on got not as good.
Yeah,
And
then we got to Requiem and it all went down.
Yeah, at a certain point, I stopped watching those two. I know I saw Prometheus and was not impressed. I'm kind of interested in the new TV show that's coming out.
Yeah,
where they're on Earth.
The new one, Alien Romulus, I think is really good.
Is it?
It's more like the first one because like the first two feel like actual horror movies.
Right.
And then they get into like sci-fi action and then Romulus brought it back to sci-fi horror.
I haven't seen that one. But I'm excited about the TV show.
Yeah, I feel because it's called Alien Earth.
Something like that.
Which is a really interesting concept.
Yeah.
They tried doing it in Alien versus Predator 2.
Right.
Which was not great.
I like it. I like it when they take those movies in weird directions, like the Predator movie that's set in like the 1800s with the Native American girl.
Oh yeah,
and stuff like that. Where you're like, well, I never even thought of that.
Yeah,
and I think that's really interesting
because the Predator has been around for decades, and so you're finally seeing it in a more what am I trying to say? Just back in time, because all of them take place in modern day or the future where they have big guns and.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough movies like that where if it's happening now, well, maybe it happened before. There's not enough movies. I guess there was, what was it, Cowboys versus Aliens? Or something.
Oh yeah,
something like that. But yeah, I mean, you think about what would they have done. I don't know. I just think that's an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah. And I like movies set in like 1920s or just in an older decade because it feels new, because horror, I mean, they do it often, but not a lot of times do they do it well.
Well, it's just like movies before cell phone. It's easier to do that kind of stuff where, newer movies are like, well, you just bring in this equipment and you can find out real quick. But, movie set in the 1920s, they can't do that,
Yeah, I really liked the new Nosferatu because it had a really good feel to it, and it felt like it was. I think they used like a filter over everything to make it feel more
like grainy.
Yeah. And it was really well, and I loved the new Nosferatu.
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm excited to see it. I want to see it. So
yeah, it's kind of hard to keep up with towards the end.
Yeah,
but it's pretty good.
I'll have to check that out. There's other. I'll be honest. They keep talking about the Five Nights at Freddy's sequel.
Oh yeah,
I kind of want to see it. The first movie, it's not great, but I enjoyed it. At least the animatronics were cool.
Yeah,
I like when things are done practically.
What I didn't like about that one is the animatronics were supposed to be like something wrong with them, and like when they see a human, they think that it's one of them without like all the stuffing on. And in the new movie, they were playtime buddies.
Yeah, it was weird. It was definitely a weird movie.
Yeah,
but 100% not what I expected. So, and of course, I don't know the Five Nights at Freddy lore and all that stuff. So I was going in with just a very basic knowledge of FNAF.
Yeah, it after the series got way too complex for what it should be, I stopped paying attention to it.
I think there's even a new game getting ready to come out, or did just come out.
I think so. Yeah.
So.
And then I I liked the movie because I like any movie with Matthew Lillard in it.
Yeah, Matthew Lillard's good. Yeah.
I've loved him in Scream.
Oh, he was great in the first Scream movie.
Scream is my favorite, and they're bringing him back in 7.
I heard that.
Which is, so he's dead. So how are we gonna do this?
Who knows?
And then like they're also bringing back the killer from 3, who fully got shot in his head. So I don't know how he's gonna come back either.
Who knows?
Because you could argue with Stu, because I guess getting a TV dropped on your head isn't fatal, but he also got stabbed
in the
a
stomach.
lot.
Yeah.
And he was feeling a little woozy there.
Right. It's been a while since I've seen that, but I do remember when the first Scream came out and going and seeing that, and it was awesome.
Yeah, I feel it put a new twist on horror movies because it was a lot more meta.
Yeah, they were acknowledging, well, here's what would happen in a horror movie, right? Here's what they would do, and then those things would happen, and yeah.
And then the twist where there's 2 killers instead of 1, which was the first time they'd ever done something like that.
Right.
And it was a really good twist.
Yeah, it was a great movie.
And then, they did that, and then everybody else was just like, well, how about I do that since Scream did it so well? Because I know Chucky started doing that, and then the Chucky series got really...
Yeah, it got real hokey.
Yeah, I liked... My favorite out of those are the first 3, because they're more horror than horror comedy.
Oh, yeah. I think I've only ever seen the first 2.
Yeah, those are definitely the best ones.
Oh, yeah. The first one, when I was growing up, of course, there wasn't cable, and so you were kind of stuck watching whatever was on, and that first one was one that was like a Saturday afternoon movie. It was on all the time. I saw it way too many times when I was younger.
But going back to like books and horror movies based off of books, there's a new one coming out that I'm excited to see. I haven't read the book, but it looks really interesting. Is Clown in a Cornfield.
I haven't heard of that one.
Which I don't know much about it, but it's supposed to be a really bloody slasher. Which it's another slasher, which they've definitely overdue.
That's based on a book?
That's based on a book.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a slasher in a book, but I don't know. I need to read it first before I go see it.
I do want to go see The Monkey, which is based on a Stephen King short story, Monkey Shines. And there is an older movie called Monkey Shines that follows the short story a little bit more, but they took this movie in a whole different horror comedy, I guess. It's super bloody.
Yeah, I was interested in going to see it, but I've heard not great things about it.
Oh, really? I've heard it's really funny.
Have you?
Yeah. Which is a weird thing to say about a horror, I guess.
Yeah, like, I love horror movies, but I hate it when horror movies go more comedy.
Yeah.
Like, I do like the Evil Dead series, which they get really into the comedy after the second one. I mean, the second one starts it off, but it's...
Yeah, Army of Darkness is a full-on comedy.
Yeah, that is... And it's less of a horror movie.
Right.
More of a medieval action movie.
Yeah, just a fish out of water.
Yeah.
Yeah, type deal. I'm excited about Life of Chuck, which is getting ready to come out. It's based on a Stephen King short story that Stephen King has said is the best adaptation of any of his works. So, I don't know how they're going to make it into a movie. It's a story of the apocalypse told in reverse. Like, it's weird. I don't know.
Huh.
So, and it's got a ton of people in it, ton of famous people. So I'm excited about that one.
Yeah, that sounds really good though.
Yeah,
because I feel they could do it, but I feel like it's an easy story to mess up.
Yeah, but apparently they did it, so I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah,
so I'm excited about those.
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually with horror. I don't mind horror movies. I don't usually go to the theaters to see them. Those are ones I'll wait usually and watch them at home. But
I'm the opposite way. I love seeing horror movies on the big screen because it's if you don't like go to the theater often, you're in more of like an uncomfortable place, and then you're watching a like if I was seeing Hereditary for the first time in a new theater, I feel like that would be a very unsettling experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it would. That's an unsettling movie. Very unsettling movie.
Yeah. We've talked about Hereditary plenty on this podcast.
Yeah.
But it's probably in my opinion the best psychological horror movie.
It's one that definitely made me feel something. I mean,
Yeah.
through the whole movie, and we talked about it before, there's just a sound that plays through the whole movie in the background. And if you're not cognizant of it, I mean, if you're not paying attention, you may not notice, but it just, I don't know, that sound just made me feel uneasy through the whole movie. It was just like a low bass rumble through the whole movie that it was unsettling.
And it's such a great look into the different ways of how grief can take over someone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I prefer those ways. Like, I prefer horror movies for things that are plausible.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I never really got into Freddy Krueger and Jason and those because they're more supernatural. Like, I don't think somebody's going to come into my dreams and kill me. Right?
Yeah.
But, like, horror movies where you're, I don't know, I don't mind ghost ones, but I believe in ghosts. So, you know, things like that where you're like, well, I don't know, maybe that could happen.
Yeah, like the paranormal investigation movies, which are huge into like the whole ghost thing. I feel like the first one did it well.
First one was great.
But then after that, I think in the fifth one, a portal to hell opens.
Yeah.
Or something like that. And
but that's another one where the first one, you don't really ever see anything.
Yeah.
You know, and then as the movies went on, you start seeing more and more, and I think that makes it less scary.
Yeah. Because with, there's one, a recent slasher movie, which is called In a Violent Nature, where you completely, you stay within the perspective of the killer. And, like, it's a really boring movie, but once you get to, like, the climax of him, like, getting ready for the kill, it gets really good, and it has a really messed up kill in it.
I read an article just yesterday, and I don't remember what it was called, about a horror movie that's getting ready to come out that's told entirely from the perspective of the dog in the movie.
Huh.
But now I don't remember what it was called. I think it was a horror. Whatever it was, I know for sure the movie is told from the perspective of the dog that's in the movie. I want to say it was a horror movie, though, so maybe I'm wrong.
That would be an interesting concept, especially animals don't usually last too long in horror movies.
No, that's an easy way to make somebody or something bad kill a dog.
Yeah,
you know,
because Halloween. I don't know much, but I think Halloween was the first to do it. Because Michael was stalking a babysitter, and then the dog comes out and starts barking at him, so we...
See, I think the Halloween movies are scarier than Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street. But again, as they went on, they kind of got schlockier.
Yeah.
You know?
The two best Halloween films are the first and second one.
Yeah.
Because the second one picks up right after, and it's still following Laurie in the hospital.
You don't like Season of the Witch? With the masks? And
So, I liked Season of the Witch. I thought it was a good movie. Because, like, John Carpenter wanted to do something like Creepshow.
Right.
Where he wanted, like...
Creepshow.
I love Creepshow so much.
That, not to get us off of the Halloween, but the Creepshow with the kids in the pond with the floating stuff on it that like eats them.
In the second one?
Yeah, where they're out on the little dock in the middle and they can't get off. That ruined me for swimming in any sort of open water thing forever. If I see anything floating on water, I'm convinced it's going to eat me.
Yeah, but John Carpenter wanted to do multiple stories, and if it did well, he was going to make a sequel to like kind of wrap it all up. So that's why Halloween got the one with Michael Myers got a sequel, but Michael was way too popular. Gotcha. So they brought him back in the fourth one, which I always thought it would be interesting to see what John Carpenter would have done.
Mm-hmm.
Which he kind of continues that in his own graphic novels called Tales for a Halloween Night,
Oh, okay.
where he takes lesser known or just starting out authors and puts their like comics into a one big book, which I've last year when I went to Comic-Con, they had an autographed the first 5 volumes of it, and I've read all of them, and they had some really good stories. There's one where it was like this one like really stood out to me, but it was this father taking his kids home from Christmas, and like throughout the story it gets really weird because like all the kids say are, I want to see my mom, or I want to go back home.
Mm-hmm.
And as he's driving them home, he stops at a cemetery, which is really weird. And the next panel is in his backseat where it's the corpses of his kids.
Oh.
And he got his entire family killed, and if I remember correctly, a drunk driving accident. And it was a really well told and a really eerie story.
I mean, I didn't.
Yeah,
that sounds good.
Yeah, there's a lot of I feel like hidden gems in that.
Yeah.
And going back to Creepshow, which was a movie based
on comics.
Based on comics,
Yeah.
but the comics didn't exist, so they completely made a new like comic style, and I love it so much.
Yeah, the creep shows, like, again, those were ones when I was little, when we first got HBO, when HBO was new. You know, they played the same things over and over, and Creep Show was one of those that, again, I probably watched too young and watched way too many times. And
like, I love the original, and then Stephen King, because he worked on it, which he came out with the graphic novel of the movie, which I also love.
And he's in one of the shorts.
He's in The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill.
Yeah, plays the farmer or whatever.
Yeah, and I love a line in that I can't say because there's a bad word in it.
Right.
But I love it so much. And then they did the sequel, which wasn't as good as the original. And then the original had 5 stories, where the second one only had 3.
Right.
And then they came out with a third one, which I didn't even know there was a third one until I just came across it. Was not too great.
Not good.
And then they came out with a TV show on Shudder, which is a horror streaming service. They did 4 seasons of it, which I loved because it kept it like a comic book, and then they had some really good stories in it. And then they came out with an actual Creepshow comic series, which I have gotten all of so far that have come out.
I didn't realize Shudder. I've watched stuff on there before. I didn't realize there was a Creepshow series on there. So.
Yeah, it's a really good series, and I think it's one of Shudder's most popular TV shows, or the originals.
I think I got Shudder because I like bad movies.
Yeah,
That's what I really like, and I listen to a lot of podcasts where they talk about bad movies, and some of them are on Shudder, and so to watch them, to listen to the podcast, I'd watch them on there and stuff. So
yeah, I like Shudder because it has a lot of foreign films, and some, like the original Ring, which was called Ringu, was originally a Japanese film.
Was it Japanese and Korean? I know both of those are a lot of horror movies.
Like The Grudge and some others.
A lot of American remakes of Japanese horror movies.
Yeah, and it doesn't hit the same.
No,
because the originals feel they're like, I know, like the original Ring was low budget and it had such a great feel. And sometimes low budget horror movies, I feel, are so much better than big blockbusters because they have more. I don't know, more of an original story.
I'd agree with that. And it's kind of like we were saying with Jaws, where you just more of it's in your head because they don't have the money to show you as much. And,
Yeah.
And anything that you create in your own mind is always going to be scarier.
Yeah.
You know. So.
And then there's like more popular horror movies that are based off books. Like, I never knew the original Exorcist was based off of a book, and that's probably one of the most popular horror films.
Oh yeah.
And you have, I didn't know Jaws was based off a book until we talked about it.
Yeah, and I get the book's a little different, I guess, but that's one I've never read. So.
Yeah, there's. I know in the 1930s, they were all monster movies, and they didn't really have much to base off of, so they always based them off of books. So they have Frankenstein, Dracula, and my favorite, The Invisible Man. Right. Because I like The Invisible Man because he's less of a monster and more like he had certain chemicals that were able to turn him invisible that drove him insane.
Right. Well, and that's the same with Frankenstein. You know, in all movies, he's just fart. But in the books, he's very well spoken. He's intelligent. You know, things like that. There's a new, I think Guillermo del Toro has a new Frankenstein getting ready to come out. So I'd be interested to see if maybe he keeps it a little closer to the book.
Yeah, I think it would be it's interesting because I love some of Guillermo del Toro's work.
Oh, yeah.
He has a show on Netflix. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's an anthology horror series. And the stories are really interesting, and they feel more original.
Yeah, he's an interesting guy. But the movies that I've seen, I really enjoy Guillermo del Toro. So it'd be interesting to see what he does with Frankenstein, which is a horribly boring book.
Yeah. But like you have Dracula, which is probably one of the most popular horror monsters.
Well, and Bram Stoker's Dracula with Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves, and that's a good movie. That's a good one.
And Nosferatu, which was they basically like copied and pasted the book, but they changed the characters' names and they changed more of the look of Dracula and renamed him to Count Orlok. Right. And it was originally a German film, and it took 10 years to get to America. And it was a silent film because it was made in 1922. Right. And it was a really interesting movie. And then you have the new remake, which definitely goes in its own direction.
Right. And then there's the Willem Dafoe movie that is shot as if Nosferatu really was a vampire.
Yeah, because there was a lot of behind the scenes like stories that he would stay in the makeup and that he would never break character even after shooting ended, and so everybody theorized that he was a real Dracula.
Yeah, method acting before method acting was a thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one yet.
The Willem Dafoe one?
Yeah, but it feels like an interesting story.
Yeah. Yeah, one of those kind of what if movies. Well, what if he really was? What would that have been like? Yeah.
Yeah, I like one of my favorite like Marvel things or like the What If series.
Oh yeah, I like the What Ifs. Yeah.
And I feel it could be interesting to do that with horror, because a cool maybe horror film would be like the Clue movie, where at the end you see how anyone could have done it, right? Or like how everybody would have done it, and it doesn't really give you a clear answer, if I remember correctly. I feel like a horror movie in the kind of with the premise of Scream, with that type of ending, I feel like that could be really interesting.
That's why I liked the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose, which was based on an actual court trial, this girl, and in that movie they show it both ways. As the two sides are presenting their cases in court, it cuts to, okay, if this was a real she really was oh man, why can't I think of the word?
If she was really possessed.
Possessed. There we go. This is what it would have been if it were mental illness or something else. This is what it would have been, as the defense is showing their side and the prosecution. And that was interesting. It goes back and forth. If it was real, if it was this, and yeah, I agreed. I don't think it ever really resolves. And over the credits, they play like the actual sounds from the exorcism and stuff like that. It's an interesting one.
I like horror films based off of a true story.
Mm-hmm.
Like I like the Conjuring films because I know like it's based off of true events,
right.
but it's like amplified to like 100 because like in the original Conjuring it has a happy ending, when in the original case at the end the mother was possessed and she was flung across the room. And she hit the wall so hard they thought she was dead. But when they found out she wasn't, the father punched Ed, which was like the paranormal investigator, and they yelled at them to leave. And I think they moved out a couple years later.
I don't remember the real story. I think, weren't the two investigators like on set when they made the first one, or one of them?
I'm not sure. I think Ed Warren passed away before the first one, so it might have just been Lorraine, but
maybe, and they may
I'm
not.
not sure.
I might be making that up. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but that would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And they did the second one, which was I don't really know anything much about the true events,
right?
But they have like the recording. I think they show it at the end of the movie of. There's this one scene where the little girl is possessed and she's talking as the ghost, or like as the thing that's possessing her, and they show like the actual recording.
Oh.
And it's kind of freaky.
I think I saw the first one and I didn't see any of them after that, because then it was like,
yeah,
Annabelle connected to those, and
yeah, they did because after the first one got really popular, they had this second one, and then there was Annabelle, which has 3 movies,
right?
And then there was The Nun, which has 2.
And oh yeah, I forget that's connected to, yeah, it's a whole universe.
Yeah, and there's the Curse of La Llorona, which they have.
That's a prequel, right?
Yes, I think it's a. Ooh,
or is it not?
I think it's its own story, but within the Conjuring universe.
Gotcha.
And then they're coming out with a 4th one this year, I think, which I don't know. I feel like the first one is the best one, which is usually how it goes, and the third one, which is an interesting story. It's kind of like the possession of Emily Rose, because it's like. It's based off of true events, but it's the Devil Made Me Do It, which this guy claims that he was possessed by a ghost after murdering his boss. And they took it to court, and it's an interesting story, and the real life story is I feel really interesting.
Yeah, I like a good haunting story. It's based on real life events, like haunting in Connecticut or something like that.
Oh yeah,
yeah, I like that. Again, but it's things that I guess it's plausible. Look, something happened to these people. I like that.
Yeah,
I like that kind of stuff for sure.
Well, I think that's all we have time for.
Okay.
Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, anytime.
I've been Logan Loya, and you've been listening to Terror Talk.